All right, everybody. Welcome back again. If you are returning with me from the previous class, or welcome for the first time if you're joining me for the first time tonight. I am Josh Hernandez. I am the admin of the Notary Loan Signing Agent Training Group in Facebook, a free resource for new notaries. Once again, establishing the rules, please try to remain muted as best you can. And out of courtesy for the presentation and for everybody else. And also, we'll be unmuting and whatnot to go through the Q&A, which will happen at the end of this presentation. All right, while I am getting the PowerPoint set up for Zoom, I would like you to, once again, type your name into the chat for attendance purposes. And also, if you could please pop in there 0 to however many years, what your experience is as a notary. If you haven't been a notary yet, just put 0. If you have been a notary, just put in the amount of years. And that way I can kind of get a sense for the overall majority of the audience, and I can go more in depth or less in depth depending on what that is. So if you excuse me for a second, I'm going to set up the PowerPoint and I'll be right back. All right, here we go. If for whatever reason you cannot see the whole screen, let me know. If you see too much, then let me know that too. All right, so this is Notary 202, ID verification methods and journaling. What today is going to be covering, or this module will be covering, is a deeper dive into the methods of identification verification and journal keeping. All right, it's meant for notaries of all experience levels, but is most beneficial for notaries with no experience level. It's meant to follow the 101 series, Learning the Basics class. And it is not a state-specific course. It's not an all-inclusive look at everything notary, and it is not training specifically on signing agent items. This training will cover personal knowledge ID verifications, identification card verifications, credible witnesses, journals, some final advice, and then my special gift that I think half of you saw this last time. All right, so identity verification. Okay, every single notarial act. Miss Ebony, if you can please mute yourself. Someone's walking over there. Hold on, let me see if I can find her real quick. You're fine. There we go. All right. So every single notarial act starts with verifying the identification of the signers, okay, without exception. There will be 0 instances where you will not do this, okay? Very important. So there are 3 ways to verify identification. Ms. Raquel, if you can please mute yourself. Three ways to identify or to verify ID. One of them is through personal knowledge. Another one is by using some form of valid ID. And then the last one is through credible witnessing. First up is the easiest way. All right, personal knowledge. All right, if you as the notary personally know the signer, that's enough to establish identification verification. All right, you'd simply mark down, by personal knowledge on your notarial certificate where needed, and also in your journal, and that's it. Not really much to say other than, check your state laws to see if they have any specifics for it. But as you can see, the individual acknowledgement form that I have up on your screen is from the NNA, and that little long orange arrow is pointing to the part that you would check on that particular certificate. All certificates are different. Same information, just different format and presentation. So if your state requires you to have that in there, you can go ahead and find a notarial certificate that has that, or create your own, or simply have a space to write it in. Some people just say, by means of, or ID verified by means of, and then a long blank, so that way they can fill it in by hand, whether it be driver's license, personally known, credible witness, etc. But I do caution you, you still have to operate within the law, so you can't notarize for spouses or any document that you have an interest in. Okay, just because you know them, right? That is accurate. However, you still can't notarize for your spouse or for anybody else that you do know, but whose document you also have a vested interest in. But if my best friend needs a notarization and I don't have anything to do with that document, then I can definitely notarize for my best friend without seeing my best friend's identification card. Okay, so I would just simply annotate on there how I verified them, because that's required, and I would just say, by personal knowledge, and that's it. So identification cards themselves. This is the most common, the next easiest, right, and the most common way of identifying somebody is through their ID card. There's a laundry list of acceptable and unacceptable ID forms. Your state takes precedence over what you can use. Okay. They are the ones that commissioned you, so they are the ones who say what forms of ID you can and cannot use. Although state A says you can and state B says you can't, or you can do it this other way, whatever state you fall into, that's what trumps everything else. Okay. So if you ever do get into loan signing, and the mortgage industry commonly accepts social security cards and a high school ID with a picture on it as to verified forms of information or verification, which is not true, but I'm just throwing it out there as an example. And your state says you cannot use a high school ID or a social security card to notarize or to verify ID, then they win. All right. Sorry, mortgage company or whoever's trying to hire you, but I cannot legally notarize this form for this signer. Okay. Your state trumps everybody else. They're the ones who commissioned you. They're the ones who can revoke your commission. So the most universally accepted are on this list. A good rule of thumb is that if it's an official unexpired government ID, it's probably 9 times out of 10 going to be accepted across the board. Okay, I haven't ran into one that hasn't yet, but that's not to say that it's not out there. So I got to throw that little disclaimer out. But state issued driver's licenses, state issued ID cards, government issued, federal government issued passports, military IDs, state, county, and local government IDs, those are typically pretty good. So just FYI, these are commonly used ones and commonly accepted. Some states do allow for you to use, I-551 cards, which is a resident card, green cards, etc. Foreign passports if they're not expired. Some states, I think, even allow you to use expired foreign passports as long as it's within a certain time frame. Driver's licenses from Mexico and Canada because it's still part of the Northern America area. Digital driver's licenses, some states require or allow that, some don't. So there's a list of what can happen. This is kind of that list right there. But once again, check with your state. And some states also allow you to use expired official government IDs. Okay, so once again, you got to check with your states. Like in California, a signer is the signer must be either let me rephrase my train of thought here. Any signer ID has to be either current, or if it's expired, it has to have been expired within the last 5 years, and then they can still use it. Right? For Florida, it permits notaries to accept expired IDs from a signer provided that the expired ID was issued within the last 5 years and includes a serial identifying number, right? So it has to be something that has like a driver's license number attached to it, right? A lot of states also use the RULONA, the Revised Uniform Law on Notarial Acts, and that allows an ID to be accepted up to 3 years after it has been expired. So like Iowa, Montana, North Dakota, West Virginia, you can accept an ID that falls within that 3-year period, if it is expired within those 3 years. 13 states accept a current ID. Texas requires an identification card to be presented by a signer to be current and issued by the federal or state government. So it can't be any other government, it has to be federal or state. So once again, it's very important that you check with your state. All right, I wish I could give you a one-size-fits-all answer right now, but I just can't. All right. Other than what was on the previous two slides, as far as the most common ones, federal or state issued government IDs are going to be the most common and the most acceptable across the United States of America. Okay, so keep that piece in mind. Now, generally speaking, in accordance with your state requirements, you need to be comfortable that you have established identity. All right, many states do leave it up to you as a notary to make that judgment call. So, for example, when I was in Texas, saw an ID, saw what was it there? There's like electricity bill. Like I saw a number of things just to establish. But once you realize that person is who they say they are, and you feel that is that their identity is verified by you, then you can comfortably move forward with that, right? A lot of states do allow for that judgment call. Some states don't at all. So I can't stress enough how important it is to really figure out what your state does and does not allow. So credible witnesses. This is actually a pretty neat way of identifying somebody. It can be scary for a lot of notaries, especially new ones and some seasoned ones, or mid-range who've never had to use it. So, what is it? When do we use one? How do we use one? What's required, etc. Well, let's talk about it. All right. So a credible witness is like a go-between. All right. There's a chain of personal knowledge or verified identification that's never broken, as you'll see on the image right there. So when do you use one? You'd use one when there's no other method available to you. Okay. And you'll use one in one of two ways, right? So most states have an option available to you from one of two different common ways, and that would be one, maintaining a chain of personal knowledge, or two, verifying the ID of the credible witness or witnesses. Some states require two witnesses, and from there going on to the signer piece. So both play out like on the image on your screen. The notary personally knows or verifies the identity of the credible witness or witnesses. The credible witness or witnesses know the signer, and that's how that identification knowledge chain kind of never gets broken, all the way from notary to signer, signer to notary. Okay. Some states require personal knowledge or a state approved ID specifically. And most require that the credible witness be placed under oath or attest to their truthfulness and knowing the signer's identity, and knowing that the signer is who they claim to be. Okay. Witnesses usually have to be impartial to whatever the signer is signing as well. So if you have a contract that is signing over land to the signer and the credible witness, you can't use that credible witness anymore, right? That's the signer now, not a credible witness. There's also laws in place for using credible witnesses for signers that are not kin, right? Just like how you cannot notarize your spouse's signature in documents because you might have a vested interest. Same concept in some states for credible witnesses in terms of who they can be a credible witness for, depending on what they're signing the document on. So there's a lot of ifs in there, I know. But the important thing is your state will tell you how specific or general their credible witnessing requirements are. All right. No matter what happens, whichever type of identification that you're using, you're always annotating that in your journal. All right. I'm sure I lost a lot of people on that one, but that's what we have the Q&A for. Okay. Just know that you can use a credible witness to vouch for the signer. All right. And it's typically going to be under oath. And they usually have to be over the age of 18. So let's talk about journals and the elements thereof. Good old-fashioned journals. There are a lot of journals out there. Some states require it, some states do not, but it is always a smart move to use a journal. And we'll get into the requirements here in a second. But I do want to say that if you do decide, let's say that your state does not require a journal, but you take it upon yourself as the awesome mobile notary that you are, right, or notary public that you are, and you say, you know what, I'm going to keep a journal. Awesome. Your journal is now going to be state inspectable as well and held to the standard of other journals. So keep that in mind as well. Either you don't use one at all, or you do use one, and if you are going to use one, use it correctly, is my point. So with journals, no matter which journal that you use, whether it's a hard book, electronic, etc., as long as it captures the items required by your state, it's golden. Okay. Here's a list of commonly required fields. Again, this can be in the form of a book, an Excel sheet, a phone app, whatever the case may be. The main thing is the required elements are in your journal per your state's requirements. Okay. Just like with the notarial certificates, where that verbiage has to be in there. Don't get caught up with how much a journal has in it or what it doesn't have in it. All right. It's the information that it collects that's important. All right. So personally, I don't use a hard book. I use a phone app, and the app is called Notary Act, and I love it. It's awesome. Okay. They don't have a referral program, etc. I'm not getting paid by them. I just really do use it and love it a lot. So, but you do what's comfortable for you. We'll see some examples here in a second. All right. So let's look at this example. This is one example of a journal. Okay. Look at the fields that it has available: date, time, fee, type of notarization, character or type of instrument, name of signer, additional information. Right now, if we go back to the previous slide, Some of the requirements for journals, this is not all inclusive, right? It's all state specific. But most journals require, or most states require, the name of the signers, the address, the location and date of the notarization, the type of notarization it was, any fees that were charged or collected, the type of document that you notarized. Some states even require how many pages within that document were notarized, and then what method of ID you used, and then any kind of additional comments. Some states even require thumbprints. All right, so again, very state specific. But looking at this list of requirements, all right, would this journal be able to satisfy those requirements is the question. Would it suffice for someone in California that needs to have a thumbprint in their journal? Would this journal work for them? I mean, it could, right? I mean, I guess technically they could have them put their thumbprint in the additional information area, right? But I mean, as long as you're consistent with it, it should hold up pretty well. You know, would it work if your state requires a signature of the signer? It could, if you use that additional information spot, you know, I mean, it could, right? But those are questions that you want to ask yourself before you purchase the journal, especially if you're going to be purchasing something that is a book, you know, or something tangible that you cannot just easily manipulate. All right. So, and in order to do that, you need to know your state's laws. Now look at this journal. All right. Look at the fields in this one. It has a lot of information in there. It has it has a reference number even spot for them, date of the documents, the name, the fees, whether it was paid or not, a list of a bunch of different types of forms that could be notarized, a blank space in there in case you got to write something in there, and then additional information. But once again, would it suffice for your state is the question when you're trying to figure out the journaling piece, right? Now, filling out the journal itself, that can be kind of scary for some notaries. It can be intimidating. The question is always, you know, how much information do I put in there? What can I not put in there? That kind of thing. So here is an example of a filled out journal per the NNA. Right. And again, you might be wondering, you know, how in depth do I have to go? How general do I have to go? Do I have to write every specific detail? And the answer is that it's a judgment call. Probably not what you want to hear, but it's the truth. All right. The rule of thumb is the more the merrier, as long as it doesn't violate your state law, because some states prohibit the use of fingerprints. Like in Texas, I couldn't take fingerprints. I couldn't use driver's license numbers, right? So I couldn't annotate. I could annotate their address, etc. What type of identification I use, like a Texas driver's license, but I could not write down the driver's license number. All right. And the reason for that is because all journals from all states are inspectable. Right? So the public can request it, the states can request it, lawyers can request it for court cases, etc. So you have to be very cognizant of what you do put in there, what you don't put in there. This is also your saving grace in case you ever do get called into court for any reason. It kind of helps jog your memory. So no matter what journal you go with, I highly recommend that you have one that leaves some space for comments in case, you know, this particular signing or notarization, there's something off about it and you want to just kind of write it in there to jog your memory for the future. But it can be plain Jane, like you see on here. It could be extra details if you want it, right? So like look at the very top piece where it says address where notarization performed, and it said at my office. Okay, that's coming from the NNA, right? Now the NNA is not God, the NNA is not law, all right? But if at my office, right, if your office is only one residential address, I would personally say that's fair to say. Right, kind of like when you are filling in your mileage log, right, for your small business. I don't put my starting point as my home office address, right? I just put home office, and then in the very top I just write in home office equals and then my address. That way I don't have to write my address 50,000 times. You know, same concept here. If there's something that's already established and known, I don't have a problem with being general with it because, you know, my office is only one spot. So that is all a judgment call is my point. Now let's look at another example. All right, here are two different examples. Two different journals, both legal in Wyoming. All right, this was taken from the Secretary of State's website in Wyoming. And the important thing to remember is that your journal is inspectable. All right, keep that in mind. So courts can use it, public can request it, etc. And that's why you have to keep it for a certain amount of years, and you need to be cognizant of what goes in it. Every state will also require you to keep this journal for X amount of time, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. You have to have a plan in case you pass away. Your journal has to be easily accessible by someone that you designated in order for them to get that to the state or to terminate it, etc. So there's a lot of rules to it. Again, you need to read your state laws. I can't stress that enough. It's so super important. Okay. And you don't want to include any personally identifiable information that your state doesn't want you to include on here. Okay. So as you can see on this, I'm hoping that those weren't real people because the state just kind of has it up there on the website. But let's analyze this for a second. Okay. The very top one, right? So it's page number 27 of that journal. You can see that in the top left, right? It has record number 1, record number 2, number 3, the date that it was notarized, the type of notarization that it was, the date of the document, the type of the document. It has a spot for them to print their name and sign their name as far as the signer goes. This is very similar, not exact, but very similar to what I used when I was in Texas. And what I liked about it was that having the signer sign their name on my journal proved beyond a reasonable doubt, right, that they were in fact in front of me when I did the notarization. So if for whatever reason there's ever a question on my integrity or whether the person that I notarized was actually in front of me, or if I just notarized something for somebody who wasn't in front of me, they can't go there, right? Because I have their signature in my journal. Same thing with my app. Now that I'm in Kentucky, I use that mobile app. I use KYC to scan the back of their ID, populates their ID information. There's a little spot on my phone for them to sign with their finger. And now there's no question about it. I had their ID in front of me and they were in front of me because they signed. So they have the address back to the screen. They have the address of the individual. They have detailed identification of the individual, right? How they knew them, personal knowledge. This one was a Wyoming driver's license that expires on that year. The next one is a Wyoming state ID, which expires in that year. Just, kind of giving added proof that you verified the identification of that individual. To the right, it has fingerprint and other information. Wyoming doesn't require it, so they placed NA. This would be a good journal for California for that little column right there. And then the notary fee. You see a little dash on that first notary fee. You don't have to charge a fee. All right. But you can. And if you don't, if your state requires you to annotate whether you charged or not and how much you did charge, then you would put a dash or NA or whatever you feel like doing. But it is your call because it is all a judgment call. Now, if you look at the bottom one, right, that's a digitalized version of the top one almost. Okay. Now, the drawbacks to this, it's still a legal journal. It's still state inspectable and all that kind of good stuff. You can keep it on your phone as an Excel sheet, or if you only do stuff at your home office, you can keep it on your computer, etc. Downside, you'd never be able to take any kind of fingerprints with this. It is bad practice to manipulate your journal after the notarization is complete. So if you had an Excel sheet, you may be more willing or inclined to manipulate the cells or the columns and add another column and so on and so forth as time went on. So I wouldn't recommend that piece until you know for sure what you want to do or want to capture. But it is an option, is the point of the whole thing. Okay, so that's journaling in a nutshell. Kind of 200 level series for this. Now there are always situations and scenarios that we can go through. Well, what if this? What if that? What if this? And we can show those examples. I pondered putting that in here, but I assumed that we would get a lot of newer notaries or soon-to-be notaries, so I didn't want to completely go left field with it. But know this: no matter what situation occurs in your signing situation, right? That's what that comment box is for in most journals. So that way you can kind of put your 2 cents in what happened or how you felt, or, what, this was kind of off. I'm going to go ahead and mark this down in my journal, just to kind of refresh your memory in case you ever have to come back to that moment. All right. The amount of information that you place in here or not is up to you. So just like in this top piece right here where it says detailed identification of individual and it has personal knowledge, driver's license, state ID, that is perfect. If you want to go further and say when it was issued or whatever, that's up to you, right? As long as it doesn't, as long as it meets or exceeds your state requirements and does not break their guidelines as far as what they do not want you to capture, then you are 1,000% golden. You do you. All right. So that is it. I hope you better understand the concept of journaling. We'll get into more advanced examples and whatnot in future series, but that's what we're going to be covering for this right now. And once again, in case you weren't on the previous one, special gift for attending these live sessions. First one is 90% off of all the Notary 100, 200 series replays. To do this, you just got to post a review of this class in our Facebook group as a regular post. All right, and then private message me when it's done and let me know that you did it. That way I can verify it and send you the discount code. The review does not have to be positive nor negative. It could be whatever you want it to be. Hopefully it's positive, but at the end of the day, I'm not going to judge you for it. I can only get better if I get honesty. All right, and for the sake of just having the knowledge, I'll also be able to give you 50% off of the live marketing two-title escrow class I'm having on the 26th of April, which I believe is next Tuesday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time. You can get 50% off the live one or 50% off of the replay. Just send me a message in Facebook and let me know whether you want the live code or the replay code, and I'll send that to you. You don't have to do anything special for that one. You could just send me that PM and you're golden. Okay. If you decide to go to that marketing class, this would be a good code to have because 50% off of anything is a good deal, I would think. And that summarizes the entire piece of today's class for ID verifications and journaling. So thank you for attending, and let's get into the Q&A portion so that you can ask whatever questions you'd like. Stop sharing this sucker right here, and I'll get my video back on. All right, so we are back off the PowerPoint. What questions can I help hopefully answer for you?
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
This is Linda again.
Hey,
what is the name of, you said Notary app?
Notary Act. Let me show you what it looks like.
Because I went into my app store and didn't see it.
I have a an Apple, and so it's there. It's Notary Act, ACT. Let me you may have to go to the website, but I'll type it in the chat for you. NotaryAct.com. And I love it because so you have to prep it. It comes defaulted, right, with certain fields or whatever, but you can go into the settings and manipulate it to whatever your state requirements are, which is awesome. So you know how you'll see like the integrity journal, which is a good journal, and it has like 50 bazillion options and checkboxes for you to check off for any scenario under the moon. That's cool, but for me, I don't like that because I don't deal with every scenario under the moon all the time, right? And if I do, I'd rather just have an other box and write it in that one time, So with the Notary Act piece, I'm able to manipulate it to where my state allows it and what I see more common and keep it as that for the whole thing. I can use it to scan the back of the driver's license or state ID of any state for any signer. It automatically populates their information from the state's database and gives them an option to sign their signature. And now I've proven that they were in front of me and I had their ID card. So I really like it. I'm a big fan. If I could buy stock in it, I would. But yeah, notaryact.com.
Okay, and I guess I got ahead of the game. I already paid for my class.
Say that again?
Already paid for the marketing class. I forgot about.
Oh yeah, you're fine. I'll remind me of that. I'll get you the difference. Okay.
Okay. Okay.
Just remind me of that. If I haven't given it to you before we actually start the class, remind me of that on the class date.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. All right, and what else we have? We have Tamika. What was? Oh, okay. Well, there's that one. What other questions do we have? I know somebody has a question. Nothing? That wasn't that good. Come on. Oh, Mr. Sienia, go for it.
Hey there.
Hi.
Thanks for the class. I have a question. I had seen on Amazon the possibility of getting like the logs for doing like the signings, where instead of like putting like a line per every single document that we're doing, you would only have like one line per signer. What do you think about that? Because I know in Florida, we're not required to keep a log, but I am keeping a log. And so since you're saying we have to be consistent, I wonder if I could have one for signings and then one for general notary work.
I would not. I would keep one log, like one. And also, for those of you who are listening, log, record book, journal, all the same thing. Okay, just different terminologies for different states. So the only time that I would keep two different types of logs is going to be if I was doing Ron's and wet ink. All right, but all wet ink I would keep together. So all your signing agent stuff and general notary work all in one log. Okay. Now I do know what you're talking about, and what she's talking about is you have and correct me if I'm wrong, Yesenia. You're talking about if you have a signer or two, and they're and you're in a loan a real estate package, and there's multiple notarizations for each signer. Some people itemize that in their journal. Others just do all notarizations that are acknowledgments, all that are jurats, and they just kind of tick off how many they did in that one signing package. If it doesn't break your state laws and your state doesn't specify, I am a 100% fan of ticking off how many of each type of notarization, but I would at least itemize the different type of notarizations. So if it's two signers, or if it's one signer, right? And I'm doing a loan signing package and there's a refinance or whatever the case may be, I'm going to be doing X amount of jurats, X amount of acknowledgements, X amount of signature witnessing. So I would have one for jurats, right? One line for acknowledgements, one line for the signature witnessing, same signer doing their piece or whatever. And then I would just be ticking off how many of each of those categories I did on that line. But I would definitely itemize by type of notarization at least.
Okay, thank you very much.
No problem. Good question. All right. Anybody else? I can't tell if anybody has a raised hand or not. I gotta get better at this. Let's see. Maybe I do it this way. All right. All right. Any other questions or topics you want to cover for this? No? Tasha? Tamika? Shabanda? I like saying that.
How do you raise your hand? How do you raise your hand?
The little reactions icon. If you're using a computer, I think on the phone too. I just haven't used it on the phone for a while, but you can raise your hand that way. That's really cool. Yeah. And it says Zoom user, but I know it's you, Linda. Go for it.
Okay, while you were talking, and you were talking about state laws and everything. I'm in Georgia, and I went on the Georgia site, and you can get a free Georgia Notary handbook.
Amen.
Okay, so go look and see if you can get it for free from your state.
Very, very good point, Ms. Linda. Thank you so much. Yeah, there's a lot of resources that your state has for you. Even with this information, a lot of this you can find on the NNA. A lot of this you can find on your state's websites, etc. Now doing that research on your own, or paying somebody who's already done the research to regurgitate it to you in a clear fashion to where you can understand it, is your call, right? But especially if you're in states like Florida, you're in states like Georgia, right? It's a good idea to find somebody who does trainings locally for your state, right? Or at the bare minimum, you need to verify what they're teaching you, and or just look it up yourself as well. All right, because when it comes down to it, if there's any kind of malpractice or there's any kind of negligence, the excuse of, well, so-and-so taught me this way, or I was told this way, doesn't fly, because it's your responsibility to know your state's laws when you're commissioned for that state. All right, so keep that in mind as well as you move forward through your notarial journey. Any other questions, guys? Miss Ebony? Nothing?
None I can think of.
All right, no worries. You're gonna have a whole bunch of questions as soon as we end this call. Watch. All right. Well, Miss Tasha, you got something?
Yes, I actually have a question that's not pertaining to today's topic. But I just became a notary commissioner in Florida, and I want to know, I guess I'm confused on, do I have to do an additional exam on top of getting the certificate for, that's correct. I think I did it backwards.
Well,
as I'm reading stuff, I'm like, okay, I think I was supposed to do the exam first. Is that correct?
Well, in Florida, and Yesenia, I believe you're in Florida too, right? Is that what we just established earlier? In either case, in Florida, I know you're required to take an exam. It's like a 3-hour exam. I want to say, I don't know if you have to do the title insurance stuff or not. Yesenia, were you in Florida? Yes, right?
Yeah, I'm in Florida.
Okay. So there's the 3-hour exam you have to take, or 3-hour course and an exam you have to take, right?
Yeah, you do have to take an exam, and whatever class you take, usually they'll have the exam at the end of it to give you the certificate.
Perfect,
So
perfect.
it's two different certificates. Is that like there's the notary commissioner certificate and then a separate one that's designated to being a signing agent? Is that correct?
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying. No, so what was that?
I did the 3-hour course.
Mm-hmm. So
I didn't do it.
you would use the 3-hour course completion certificate for your application to get commissioned. You get commissioned, right? Now you're a notary public.
Correct.
And if you want to do signing stuff, right, and be a signing agent, there's technically no certification required. But common practice is that you go through the NNA signing agent course and be certified there. Notary signing agent is different. Yeah. So
most of the signing services that I was signing up with, they require you to have the proof that you took the course, that you took something. And a lot of them even ask for proof that you got certified through NNA.
Right. That's the industry standard. There's no law requiring it, is my point. Right. There's no like your state law requires you to take that 3-hour course in Florida to get commissioned. Right. There's no law in place that requires you to have X certificate to be a signing agent. All right. So you can do the signing agent stuff through the NNA, which is widely acceptable and highly recommended. But it's completely separate from you being a commissioned notary public. Okay. I hope that makes sense and breaks it down for you.
Thank you both so much. Yep,
no problem.
Makes a lot of sense.
And then if you look in the chat, Miss Melissa is in Florida as well, so she'd be happy to help you. And we all grow together.
Actually, I do have a question.
No, you're too late. No, I'm just kidding. Go for it.
It's also not pertaining to this particular class, but so signed up on our Secretary Wisconsin. I'm from Wisconsin. The website for the Secretary of Notary portion, and I think we're wondering if I did it incorrectly. Actually took the test and applied for the application before ordering the notary seal and the other steps. And as I read it, so like within 30 days, all of these things have to be in place and sent with the application. So I'm not sure what to do at this point.
Okay, so you took are you talking about a state required exam, or are you talking about like an NNA exam?
It was state required.
Okay, so you took the state required exam. You did your application, right?
Correct.
What are you pending?
Did not order the seal.
Okay.
Or the stamp yet.
All right. And
so
per
not
the
sure if that was supposed to have been done first.
No. Because see, when you order your stamp or your seal, it typically requires your commission information, right? So until you get your commission information, it's hard to order the stamp and seal in most states. Does that make sense? Some states have like commission numbers and things like that. Not all of them. Some do. I don't know if Wisconsin does or not. But if it does, you wouldn't know what that number is until you got some kind of communication from your Secretary of State saying that, hey, you're a commissioned notary. Here's your commission number. Your certificate's in the mail or coming in the email or whatever.
Makes sense.
Yeah. So once you get the information, then you're good. Mm-hmm. Good.
Great. Thank you.
No problem. Miss Tosh is from Wisconsin, Milwaukee. Are you guys just getting together and just coming in states? That's awesome. All right. Any other questions? No? Okay. Well, I'll hang around in case you do have a question before you hang up, or you just didn't want to ask in front of everybody. Feel free to drop off. Thank you guys again so much for being here with me. I hope that you got something from it, and I look forward to speaking with you later.
Thank you for your time. And again, I apologize for my mic being unmuted.
You're fine. Appreciate you. Have a good night.
Thank you. You as well. Bye.
Bye. Very welcome. Thank you guys. Thanks, Cecilia. You too. We're going to be friends. I can see it. Miss Tamika, thank you so much.
Good night. I'm gonna go ahead and disconnect.
Okay. Have a good night. Thank you.
You too. Thank
Mm-hmm. All right, guys. Have a good night.